Should we be going short right here? We're going to talk about that today as we get into some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, AMD, and Meta going forward, maybe taking a peek at Microsoft and Google as well. But is this a good area to short? We're going to talk about that today as we get into the SPY. We're going to talk about the possible better short opportunities coming in the future if we see some kind of bounce. Sure, we can see that dramatic selling. So we're going to get into all of this as we get into that technical analysis. And let's start off with the SPY. Is this a good area to short? The answer here is no. You're really looking for some kind of rebound in order to place another position at this point, and you're looking for that structure on the shorter time frames. The actual good places to short here was right around when 508.50 was broken down. We're breaking out of this key level right here. We had this marked off, and this is a great area to actually hold a short for quite some time. And then the next area would be this retest right here. We actually see this candle go across. We got a retest, and we see that pull down. So these areas up here are much better to short. As you get down into this area, as we come down into a very important level right here, we have to pay attention because we could be bouncing. Why could we bounce from this level? Well, first of all, we can look at the weekly. You can notice that we are now testing that 20-week moving average, and we could see that bounce. Now, I'm not saying the selling won't continue. I just think we have a good chance for some kind of exhaustion rebound, right? Some kind of rebound. But as we look at the MACD down here, you notice that red impression on the histogram, not encouraging to the bull side, and now those sellers will come in one of these points. And what you want to pay attention to is the next short opportunity. So we're going to go into the shorter time frames here. We're going to go into a 30-minute for the SPY, give you guys those weekly and daily ranges for tomorrow and the rest of this week. So going forward, the purple lines here, that is going to be the weekly expected moves. This is what the options market has priced in for this week. So as we go up, we can see a price point of 505.82 to the upside for this week. And by Friday close, we could test something like 484.50 to the downside. So these are going to be the areas to pay attention to. Remember, we gravitate to those areas. When we break through them, we see something dramatic happen. That's what happened last week. And we actually were able to use the monthly expected move as some resistance, see that curl over, keep curling over into negative territory. If we keep curling over into negative territory, let's go down to the bear side first. If we see some kind of pop anywhere in here and we just curl over, we will still be in negative territory, which means that negative trend is going to continue. Notice that the trend on the 30-minute is very much so down at this point. So we have to say any kind of pop we get could lead to a crossing back over of this MACD, and we want to pay attention if that curls over in negative territory. Now I wanted to talk to you guys about where I believe the next short opportunity is for this, and we're going to use these daily ranges first. We're going to give those out first, right? 499.86 to the upside for Monday and 490.46 to the downside for Monday. So if we do see that selling pressure continue early on in the day, we could see that 68% chance to land back in this zone, right? So if this happens pretty early on, let's look for that to come back up. But if it happens early on, maybe we actually head towards that weekly expected move. The good part about heading towards a weekly expected move early on in the week, if we're not still completely crashing, if we're actually seeing this more taper down, right? Taper like this or taper out like this, maybe get one down here, we get some kind of divergence. You can see bounces because this is priced in from the options market. This is all that is expected. And therefore, if we break outside of that, you have a 68% chance for a bounce. We landed outside of it last week. So that means this week, we probably have a good chance of seeing it close back within it. We close back within it a lot of the time. So where is the actual next short opportunity, and where could we recover? What price point could we take back in order to recover and maybe see this as a sturdy bounce, maybe even go to a new all-time high, which I'm really not leaning towards, but we could set up a lower high. So when we want to pay attention to the next short opportunity, I would say if we come up into this area here and we're able to use that as resistance, we curl back over into negative territory, I think you have a good shot at that fading and seeing that come down for the rest of the week. So I believe the next short opportunity is going to be some kind of bounce like this. And if we end up going down first, I still believe we are going to see some kind of bounce with all the earnings that are coming out. Someone gets some good news, or just the stuff in the Middle East starts to decrease a little bit. We start to see it mellow out, and then we see some bullishness come back in the market because this is a dramatic downside move, and you will see, because volatility is higher, some kind of rip higher most likely. Now, this area here is also very important, right? This is where we could test that monthly moving average. We could test the weekly the range, the expected move. and then that could come down and we could see that crossover. But what if we get above this level? So around this point, when we're doing something like this, we have to pay attention if we're able to break outside of this or get above this price action in any way. This could lead us to go up into this zone or even go and test an area like this level up here, right around 516, right? 515 to 516. So we're going to see some extreme bullishness. Watch out, because this may do something here. We do have divergence on the 30-minute. We have the flatness of the RSI down here, one little blip here, but that's giving you a divergence on the nearest price action. So if we get that big move, what we want to do is pay attention to a 2-hour. So as we take back some levels, it's going to be very difficult for this to fully recover. And that's why I'm leaning towards us setting up some kind of lower high, maybe in this area or this area right here, because we could see this reaction up with that 30-minute divergence, get that 2-hour to cross. If we get that extreme bullishness, it's just going to take a lot to get to positive territory. So I think what happens first is, I think we go up to this area here, we react back down, and then we see that base out over time. I actually think a 2-hour divergence will be very good for a bottoming in this downward correction. And so we have to pay attention to that. Remember, you're very far away from positive territory. So this negative 2-hour trend can continue, and some kind of bounce could be your next short opportunity. This is where we'll pay attention to those 30 minutes and 15 minutes live and see if we see any momentum weakening here and see some crossing over into negative territory. But I just want to show you the MACD is very far away. So if that curls back down negative territory, this 2-hour negative trend will continue. Now, if you're watching us live, remember we go live all week, so make sure you're subscribed and turn on those notifications so you can join us every single morning while we talk about some stocks. And then this right here is very important. We marked off this zone down here live, showing you the price action in here, some liquidity in here. So we thought this would be very important. Why? Because we gapped out of that zone. We used it as resistance. And actually in the shorter time frames, we used it as a resistance for a brief moment. And then we, gapped out of that zone. So this is going to be a very important area. And as you can see, towards the end of the day Friday, we actually touched the top of that just barely, and then we're coming up. So just barely touching it. We want to go to a 30-minute just to show some structure here. Q's looking a little weaker. This is why I'm overall leaning towards that 2-hour on the SPY not being able to fully recover, price not being able to fully recover, because this isn't showing you divergences. This is showing you a 30-minute that is way down in negative territory, which tells me that this could pop up like this and just roll back over. So what if that just pops up like this to this area? Very important area, as we do have some liquidity in there, right? We might want to use this as resistance now and then start to head down from there. So we'll pay attention to any kind of crossing over of this MACD into negative territory. That tells you the 30-minute is most likely going to continue that trend, but this would be a great place for a sturdy bounce. And I wanted to talk about that going forward after I give you guys the weekly and daily expected moves for this week. All right, so as of this week, we have 426.46 to the upside, and then we have 402.84 to the downside. Sorry for the hiccup. 419.73 to the upside for the daily expected move, and 409.57 for the bottom side of that daily expected move. So we did break out of a lot of daily expected moves towards the end of the week last week. So good shot that we're actually going to start to land in a few of these or react the other direction to kind of balance that out. We'll have to see from here. But I showed you that 30-minute. Now I wanted to show you a place where maybe that next short opportunity could be, because this is not a good area to short. I mean, look, you're very oversold. You're probably going to see some kind of bounce. Where could we pay attention to for that bounce? Well, what if we retested a level that was some good support in the past, right? We got support at this level. We kind of consolidated at this level, used it as support to go higher. We saw resistance up here. So I would be paying attention to this little area right in here, right where my weekly and my monthly are. I think that is a great place where we could see some kind of rip up on a 30-minute, and maybe that starts to back off. But remember, the 30-minute on the SPY has divergence. So if we get a stronger move, where could we pay attention to? I'm going to tell you right now, 438.28 is looking great. If we see some kind of big reaction to 438.28 and then we curl back over, you still will not be able to get into positive territory. And if you do, it'll be brief. And if we roll over, that will lead to another negative move, another downward move. So if we want to fully recover, we actually have to fully go positive and take back 438.28 for the Qs. So that's telling me I can't see this as rejection. The only way that we can go higher if we reject from here is if we do some kind of ABC pattern. And we're going to be paying attention to a lot of these things live, but as of right now, no divergence down here telling you this is a solid base. This would have to be some kind of V shape in order to fully recover. And if we get really excited with some earnings or something like that, watch out, because all this 2 hour has to do is get towards that center line, roll over, and guess what? You have your next downward move for the stock market. Before we get into Apple, make sure that if you want those weekly expected moves, those weekly risk ranges for these individual stocks, you go down in the links in the description and click on Patreon. That's where we give out some trading setups throughout the week, and we also give out the weekly, monthly expected moves and daily expected moves on Fridays for these individual stocks that we cover on this channel. So thank you so much, and I appreciate you guys for liking and subscribing. It would be great to have you guys live in the morning with us. We have a great community going on. But as we get into Apple, I just wanted to point out there is a 30-minute divergence on the MACD, not necessarily like a good divergence. Really looks flat or even down on the RSI. So no real divergence on the RSI on the 30-minute here for Apple, but you do have that on the MACD. So when I have one but not both at the same time, usually I would say, hey, we're going to see some kind of pop, but is that pop going to last? Because usually when you have one and not the other, meaning MACD only and not RSI, that is some kind of bounce, but it usually leads to that rolling back over. So for Apple, we really just have to pay attention to this 30-minute if that's able to roll back down into negative territory. And if it's going to see a more extended bounce, we can pull up a 2 hour. The thing about this 2 hour is it's starting to get more and more negative. So Apple could see more downside. We're losing these levels down here, but I just want to talk about the next short opportunity mostly on this video, and that could be if the 2 hour is able to fully curl up and maybe even get a strong move up into this zone again. You guys know how many times we've talked about this zone and how many sell-offs we have seen from this zone. So if we're able to see some kind of move, even if we don't get up to this zone, I would watch this MACD, see if that 2 hour is able to curl back down into negative territory. Now be careful out there throughout the week and throughout the next whole month, because we have a ton of earnings coming out, and you may just want to be paying attention to a different stock that doesn't have earnings, because earnings can be a 50-50 flip, and we don't like that. So we're going to trade around stocks that don't have earnings the next day. Tesla, I know it is ugly and it looks ugly, but there is some stuff that could form here. You have a triple divergence that's possibly forming down here on the MACD, and if we break out of this wedge, we could see a very, very strong move from Tesla to get back up to our zone up towards 205. Now, right now, I'm still paying attention to that 180.92 for some kind of resistance, maybe for some kind of pullback in this area or some kind of sudden drop. So on the daily scale, though, I wanted to point this out, and Tesla also has a pretty big move this week, which makes sense with the earnings coming up. So if you really want to trade Tesla, it would be really good to join Patreon just to get those weekly expected moves, so you know where to take profit or where to take some off the table. It's a very, very useful tool, and you can find some trade setups around it. For Tesla here, I really just wanted to bring up a 2 hour and show how the MACD and RSI, you'd expect some divergences in a downward move on a 2 hour for this, but we don't necessarily see any of those at this moment. We have one maybe for the MACD, but not on the RSI at the same time. This is a very weak move. We're in our big, big zone that we could see a bounce from at any time. Who's to say we don't keep going down in this overall move? Now, we would expect with earnings to see some kind of explosive move up or down. Don't pay attention to the fact that this is wedging this way, because earnings, that could just be bad news, and all of this energy that's getting very tight could be distributed down. Now, at this point, as a contrarian, you would say this is some dramatic selling. The momentum's dying out. There is potential for a bounce here, and if we didn't have something like earnings, that bounce could very well come without any kind of news or anything like that. It really, really could from the momentum perspective. But the earnings coming out kind of puts a rock in our stream, right? We trade like water on this channel, so this is going to be a rock in the stream. So you may want to see which direction Tesla chooses before it actually puts out, or before you actually take a trade here before earnings. Earnings is going to be very, very telling for Tesla. It's been beat down for a long time. It's had bad news with China multiple times. So be very, very cautious with this one. But I'm just showing you how on the daily scale, it's telling you the momentum's dead. So if it does get some good news with earnings, you can really see an explosive move from this guy. So just pay attention to those weekly ranges if you're part of the Patreon. And if we see an upward move, make sure that thing's not fading or something like that. If we see a downward move before earnings, well, what if we're outside of that weekly expected move, maybe it's worth taking a chance on. So we'll have to pay attention to that going forward. But me, myself, I do not trade around earnings. When a stock has its earnings, I literally just ignore it. Pretty much, I literally just look at a different stock because there's always going to be a better trade setup, and a 50-50 is not giving me any kind of edge. Now, Amazon, this is a pretty dang good sell-off, and you see the 2-hour well into negative territory. That's why I'm saying most likely we are going to see some kind of bounce throughout the week. But will that actually be able to hold? I think you have a lot of head and shoulders that can form, and we knew the insiders were selling in this move. All the red in here telling you that there are sellers in this area, and the insiders are selling, and most likely retail holding this up, and that gets rug pulled. So now we're coming up into a big point of liquidity. We can see a bounce with all this liquidity. Now, will that bounce lead to something sustainable? We'll have to see, because I'm leaning towards a lower high at this point. Why? Because this MACD is so far down in negative territory that you would have to see an extremely bullish move. Now, one of the things is we have earnings as well. We have earnings not this week, but the next week for Amazon. So it'll be interesting to see the price action before then. But once earnings is here, I will not be trading around Amazon very much, right? But I can see the structure. We can make a head and shoulders here. That would most likely break us down to 166.12. If we see some kind of pop and then drop down to 166.12, we can pay attention to any divergences at this point to get some kind of more meaningful bounce. But as of right now, I would be looking for the next short opportunity as the trend is down, and you should be using the trend as your friend, right? So if we see some kind of bounce from Amazon, look for that to get close to positive territory, curl right back over, continuing this negative trend. Lastly, here on Amazon, I just wanted to show you how the 30-minute is way, way down there as well. It doesn't mean we can't see some kind of sustained move, base out, sustained move, but will we create some kind of divergence around this area before earnings? That will be very, very interesting. But remember, inflation is still high, the economy is still growing, so we may be able to expect, individual companies to actually produce pretty good numbers across the board, especially something like Amazon. Because if people are still spending money out there, the GDP is still going up, then we actually could see some positive numbers coming out with these earnings. So just be open to that. But if we do see this go up like this, I would be very worrisome. Watch my 2-hour and see that curl back over, or just watch this 30-minute curl over into negative territory early on. What if this just bounces pretty dramatically and then that curls over early on in the week? There's where your short opportunity is. This is where you have potential for a bounce. So be very cautious here. Now, if we are going to continue to crash down dramatically, right, things over in the Middle East keep escalating, still pay attention to 166.12, because we could see that escalate and then see like a ceasefire and then something happens like that. So we trade like water in this channel. We're open to multiple scenarios, and we're always adaptable for the next move. Nvidia, this is a very dramatic move, and this is going to have to digest in some way. And I mean, unless things really start escalating, we just keep falling. But as of right now, you're losing that main support line, right? When we took out 841.46 and we didn't confirm that divergence, we took out these two lows right here. You knew the direction was down from this point. Where's it going to go to? Well, where's the last point we had some kind of liquidity, right? It would be right in between these two areas right here. And where are we at? Well, we're right in between those two areas right there. So this is where we could see some kind of dead cat bounce. I wouldn't be trying to catch a falling knife. I would be more looking at this to trade with the trend, right? If this 30-minute curls up and this is moving very dramatically, we could see some kind of big bounce that baits some bulls in and then just see that ripped away. So I would really look for this MACD to curl up towards that center line and then just curl back down midway through the week. I think this 30-minute is going to be very, very telling for Nvidia. Now, if Nvidia is going to recover, you got to take back 841.46. We got to be open to some kind of recovery. But as I go into the 2-hour, you're going to see as well, look how deep that is. Most likely any kind of buying from in Nvidia will lead to sellers above it. So be very, very cautious with the bounce here. All you have to do, watch a 30 minutes, see if that thing rolls over into negative territory. That's when you're most likely going to know, hey, the next downward move is coming. And Nvidia does not have earnings for quite some time, right? It has a little bit longer time. It has about a month until its earnings. So that just tells me Nvidia is something that I can actually trade and not be too worried about the earnings around it. First of all, for AMD, I wanted to talk about the daily, right? This thing has been wanting to bounce for a long time, but it just never does. And now it's breaking through a lot of the tapering that we had done. So now you have to expect, what if we go down to the 200? This is one that I believe actually could end up going further down towards that 200. It does have earnings going on next week, not this coming week, but next week. So we'll pay attention to that. But maybe we go down into one of these very important zones before then. Now, if we do get a bounce before the earnings, that would be very interesting because the daily is actually very, very low, right? So if we curl up into positive and curl back down, well, we're going to continue this negative trend on the daily. That's right. AMD is in a negative trend on the daily scale as of right now, pretty dang deep down into it. So if we actually turn up from here and curl back down into negative territory, you know that daily move is going to test this low or go make a new one, and maybe that happens right before earnings. So I have to pay attention to that going forward. A 2 hour is what I wanted to pull up on here just to show there's not, the divergences got, invalidated at this point. We could see a big reaction from AMD because it's been beat down, but will that reaction actually get to positive territory and lead to a big move? If it does, I'm paying attention to 183.20. This is where, if we were going to set up a head and shoulders in the past and we didn't get geopolitical news, that's where the price might have head to create that left head and right shoulder. So what if this is all going to be kind of FUD at this point? We actually end up going up to this level. I'll be paying attention to that for AMD, especially if that move happens before earnings. And then we'll just pay attention to it, but trade something else, and it will be very, very interesting to watch. So the 30-minute here, you're going to see a similar thing. Now, you may have some little divergence looking stuff down here, but you're not necessarily seeing those at the same time, and they're a little downward. So you're just pretty far into negative territory at this point. So any bounce can lead to selling. So therefore, even on the 30-minute, I need to pay attention to AMD getting some kind of bigger bounce and then seeing if that will fade over time, seeing if we can bounce up towards that center line and cross over, and then maybe we create a divergence in the future before earnings, right? We need some kind of basing out down here. I highly doubt a V-shaped recovery is just going to happen here, right? If you want this to base out and go higher, you need some kind of pop, some kind of double bottom, something like this to happen, some kind of tapering at this point, because it got rid of the last time it was tapering, right? It's starting to come below there. So you're going to need more of a base at this point, unless we see some kind of, for I don't know what reason, but some kind of reason we could see a V-shape. I really would like to see some structure from AMD based on how it's been performing over the last month or so. Meta kind of broke through all of this support that we were liking here, and then it just bought right back up to it at the end of the day on Friday. So we'll have to see if a bounce can come here. Most likely a head and shoulders is going to pop up in this area. We're just grabbing more liquidity most likely for the next big move down. I just wanted to point that out, and that's why we're mostly talking about the short opportunity and not necessarily recovery. We're still open to recovery, but based on how these MACDs look, if they just continue to roll down into negative territory, well, we're going to see that next negative move. And I think this would bait people into thinking, oh, Microsoft's going to a new all-time high, Meta's going to a new all-time high, and then we just see the rug pulled again. So be very cautious with the moves before earnings. Remember, a lot of these come out, after hours. So actually the reaction, you'll see it on a Friday. So that means we have all the way until Thursday to build this up. And what if that's ripped away with earnings? Still a 50-50 flip. I'll be trading another stock when it comes to Thursday and Friday, not necessarily Meta, but it is good to pay attention to, well, we could make that right shoulder at this point in this very, very important area. And if we start to break below these lows here, you just know, hey, we're going lower. Where would we go? Most likely we'd go to 453.08. Sorry, burp. 453.08 looks like a good area, because what would we do? Well, we'd be completing some kind of big cup. What if we get a handle from there and we actually see this break down a little bit further? So at this point, if we see some kind of pop up for Meta, looking for a downward move towards 453.08. Now, earnings could throw a wrench in that, and we'll take it from there. So make sure to tune in every single night as we do update you based on what's happening with earnings, based on what the price action has done in the recent days. Microsoft's a good example of why it's going to be such a struggle to head up, and it's actually in an area where it can create a great short opportunity. I'm just going to tell you that right now. The 2 hour left shoulder, the 2 hour head, and what if we get some kind of reaction to get a right shoulder? So all I have to do on this MACD, see it close to the center line, curl over negative territory. I know we're talking about a lot of similar things, but they are just setting up, and I don't want you to think, hey, this thing has to be super bullish from here. If it is going to be bullish, it's going to curl up daily MACDs and stuff like that, and we will make you aware of that, so we're not taking any kind of big shorts in this area. So if we are going to see upward moves, we're going to see bigger time frames curling back up. Right now, those weeklies are turning down. Microsoft was the one that told you, hey, there's extreme weakness coming around the corner. Microsoft is what made me say on March 30th in my video, hey, this is most likely going to top out. We are going to see a top in the overall stock market come April, right? So we were saying March was going to be trappy, and then this convinced us that April was going to have a top because boom, triple divergence. This is what Apple did to show us the base last October to see this bullish run. Now Microsoft telling you there's extreme weakness here. But you notice we're in a very important level that we've used as support before. We could see some kind of right shoulder form, and then what if we break through here? If we are going to recover, we're just going to see these dailies roll up into positive territory. So what I'm saying is, I don't think that we'll be able to roll up into positive territory with some kind of move here. If we do, then I know, hey, this has a good shot to test the high, go make a new one. So we have to be adaptable in trading like water, but Microsoft told us about this weakness well in advance. Google is one that also told us some of the stuff here, right? Flatness of the MACD. We have a downward move on the RSI, so giving you that divergence on the RSI. So flatness and downward divergence there at the same time. So that's telling you that Google is still weak, and it's actually holding up a little bit better right at the 20. So what I wanted to do was it came back into our point, 153.87, something to pay attention to. I'm really leaning towards a big move down towards 140.97 soon, but I wanted to go into these shorter time frames, and I think I want to start with the 30-minute here. The 30-minute, I wanted to show this one because of some divergence, okay? So Google actually has some divergence here. It tells me, what if people get really excited on Google before earnings? Now you have to be open to other things, right? This could be our baseline. We could have left head, maybe a right shoulder happening at this point, or maybe we go form that now to head down again. So pay attention if this low is taken out. If 153.87 is taken out, it's going to be, kind of bad for Google, but I just want to show you how Google actually showing you a divergence down here and on the RSI at the same time. So that tells me what? The 2-hour actually can roll over. We actually have an opportunity to test this high and go make a new one. So I'm going to look at the 2-hour, and when we look at that, where is it? It's right by positive territory. So Google is actually one that is telling you, hey, I have potential with this momentum. That bad news didn't break me down far enough that if we just don't see bad news or we get some good news going, we actually could see a strong move here, maybe for a retest to come test this high, right? We broke out of some wedging. Now we could get some kind of retest. What if that comes up by earnings and then we see that ripped away? Remember, earnings, though, we don't necessarily want to trade around that. It's just a 50-50 flip. Give yourself an edge by just following the price action, looking for when momentum is dying out. And that's what you're doing before the earnings, right? So we're doing this before the earnings, showing you the 30-minute divergence, showing you how the 2-hour can really curl up, very different from the other stocks. So thank you for watching this far. Really do appreciate that, because you're going to get this good info here. And we could see Google make a big move early on in the week, and that's where our weekly ranges over on Patreon will really help us out, because if we're hitting that early on in the week, that's all that's expected from the options market, and we have another reason possibly to apply a short at these highs. The dollar is something I wanted to talk about, and I'm just going to show you guys the 2-hour as a way to show you that we made a new low in the stock market, right? We made a new low in the SPY, a pretty extreme low, to be honest, and the dollar did not follow that move. So what is that telling us at this point? Someone is actually buying throughout this big downward move, and could it be the insiders, or is it the retailers catching a falling knife? Either way, if we get a bounce here, I don't really care who is buying into the move. I care about the signals. And right now, the dollar making a downward move while the SPY makes a downward move is not necessarily the correlation, right? We want to see the dollar going up while the stock market comes down. And you don't have that as of right now, which is leading me to believe that we are going to see some kind of bounce this week that maybe sets up a lower high in the grand scheme of things. And then we see that ripped away. But we have to pay attention to earnings, right? Earnings can really flip this. If earnings starts to prove itself, all right, then we're going to see this daily start to roll over on the dollar. We're going to see the dollar start to roll over and see a big positive move for quite some time. Maybe we come back down into this zone. So I just want you to be open to recovery, but know that a lower high is the most likely scenario, because these trends are very deep into negative territory. Volatility, we were going to talk about this, and the big thing here is someone was pointing it out live. Great to point it out. I'm glad you guys are paying attention out there and taking notes about the VIX, because if this 50 is able to get above the 200, that is a huge crash signal. So we probably need that positivity to come in right away if we want to see any kind of bounce in the market, because if this starts to confirm, you can start to use it as support to head higher. And if we remain up here, you're getting that crash. So just be aware that going on into this week, we do have that potential for this crash to confirm. That's why we're talking about the next short opportunity. It really looks like this wants to confirm at this point. If we see it recover, let's just go over that first, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you the recovery, but I'm going to show you more likely we are going to bounce from this area. But the recovery would be this. We actually see this dramatically break down. We get great earnings across the board and we come back down to 13 and then something bad happens along the line. It's still in April that we're most likely going to create that top. I think we have that top now, but I want you to have it in your head. Hey, we have potential. There is always a possibility for that bullishness to come back in. And I want to know what stocks in the VIX will look like if that were to happen. So pretty much if this daily MACD fully curls over and gets below the 200, bullishness can come back in for a little bit of time. So just pay attention to that. But I just want to tell you why there's most likely going to be some kind of bounce going on into early of next week is most likely because we do have these big divergences here on the VIX. The VIX not able to really go much higher than 20. And so you'd expect that dramatic of a sell-off to get above 20. That's not happening as of right now. So the volatility is still hanging out below 20, which tells me what? Look for a divergence. Okay, there's a 2-hour divergence. What do I see on the SPY? I see the SPY in a support area. So I think we could see some kind of bounce. We're even seeing a 30-minute divergence on the SPY at the same time we see a 2-hour negative divergence on the VIX, which just tells me the VIX could drop off. Where could it hold up? Well, I'm going to pay attention to here if it's going to be a small drop off. I'm going to pay attention to my trend because we could get some kind of move there. But if this is going to fully break down, we most likely are going to see that head down towards a level of about 15 and then see if that can curl back up. So even though this 2-hour may curl down, just pay attention if that curls back up into positive territory as the SPY is curling down into negative territory on its MACD. If you follow it at the same time, it will really be helpful for your trading in your analysis here. But right now you do have that divergence, which means this has the potential to roll over. It actually does have the potential to roll over the daily. So if I was paying attention to the volatility this week, I'd be looking for if those MACDs are rolling over in the SPY, and then also if we see some kind of reaction from this 200. I think this level right here of 15 is going to be very, very important. If we break through that level, guess what? We might see an actual full recovery, and then we see that bullishness come in, and then it's ripped away right as all the big guys are able to take profits, as they might have been taken aback by this downward move. So the main takeaway here is this is a dramatic move down. Is it the best place to short? No. We have to be patient and wait for the better shorting opportunity. And because we're in negative trends, this will be very simple because we'll just follow that trend. We'll look for bounces up and see if those are able to curl back down into negative territory, continuing those negative trends. Once we see divergences and things like that, that's when we can say, hey, the momentum's dying here. We have potential for bounces and drops, and that's what we're going to pay attention to going forward. As volatility looks like it could drop off early in the week, it looks like we could see some kind of bounce. Is it a dead cat, or are we going to see a full recovery? Now we know all the options that are out there, but I just want to say I really appreciate you watching. I wish you all the luck in the world trading this week. If you guys want to get my course, down in the description, I'm going to make it $149 only until the end of this month. So in the month of April here, the last week, because we're seeing that volatility ramp up, a lot of people said they want to get that course. So I want to give you guys a little discount there. So $149 for the rest of the month. I hope you guys have all the luck in the world trading for this whole week, and I'll see you live tomorrow. Peace.